Hello, hello. Okay, so back again, and this is the second part, I think, of this attempt at creating some fantasy related stories. And last time I talked a little bit about two projects. One, Project A, it's called Project A, was related to trying to go through some notes, brainstorming notes I made a couple of years ago for a fantasy setting. And Project B was simply to try to start writing a story, isekai story, from page one without really putting much upfront time in trying to create a world and do all the world building and so on. So trying two opposite approaches to creating a story. So hopefully both will result in something, but we'll see what happens. And since last time I have done a little bit. I haven't really done anything on what I call the Project A, the background story, and that was mainly because I was working on the Project B story. I did start writing. I did manage to write a little bit. My goal was to write one page, and that I managed to do. I actually managed to put down around 5 pages, I think it would be, if you converted the number of lines to pages. And I guess you could say that it's a rough first draft, but it is at least a start of the story, and we'll have to see where we take it from here. And I thought I'd read through it, what I have. I haven't really done much polishing of the content, so I expect that there will probably be things that one might wish to clean up before publishing it anywhere. But for now, this is at least a place to start. And I mainly based what I wrote on what I did some brainstorming on last time. And after having read through it, I think I'll comment a little bit on the point I have reached and what I might choose to do from here on out. But let's pull out the text, and in that regards, there's one other thing that I guess I should note, which is that having looked a little bit on the net, there is of course a story that has almost this same title, yet another isekai something. So I think I'll just skip this part of the title for now and have the rest of these two lines as my working title. So, how I used my mad coding skills to reprogram the magical system of the world, or how the genius programmer uses mad coding skills to reprogram an isekai world. So it's like something like that, and I guess we'll have to see how things develop. But this title would seem to hint at some events in the story, and would this be the end of the story? Would this be something that's a continuing element throughout the story? I don't know any at this moment. We'll just have to see. But we can at least start having a look at the text and see how it goes. So, it's probably not great, but it is what it is. So let's start from the beginning. And most isekai stories start with a protagonist, often alone and depressed, having an unpleasant meeting with a speeding truck. Then, rather than dying, they are summoned to a fantasy world as the hero that will save the world from the hordes of the Demon Lord. My story started much the same. Boring life as a programmer with few friends and few still living relatives. One day, or rather one night, when returning home in the middle of the night after a long day with much overtime, I crossed the road only to be run over. The last thing I remember was bright front lights. Was the bright front lights of a big truck that ignored the red light. After that, darkness, followed by a vortex of lights and sounds, ending with me standing in the middle of a circle drawn on the floor. With a circle drawn on the floor of a small room that had been hewn out of rock, still standing in the awkward pose of one that expects to be hit by a car, but no longer wearing the clothes I had worn or anything else. So slightly awkward sentence here, but never mind. So, feeling some combination of fear, shock and surprise, I somehow managed to avoid screaming in a shrill voice when I materialized. Not really noticing that I was no longer wearing anything, I looked around me, seeing a small square room with rock walls, torches fixed to the walls, and what looked like a magical circle from some game or movie drawn on the floor, with me in the middle. In one end of the room, in front of what appeared to be the only door in the room, stood an old man with a long white beard, a long white robe, white hair, and a satisfied expression. Next to him was a slightly overweight man wearing an oversized colorful cloak that gave me a regal look when combined with the crown he was wearing. His expression was more that of surprise. They looked very much like they had been cast as a king and a mage in a new fantasy show, and as I should find out, a king and a mage was what they were. When the initial surprise had passed, the mage was kind enough to offer me a cloak I could cover myself with, and when they started talking, I realized that I could understand what they were saying, although it did not appear to be any language I had heard on Earth. After clearing his voice, the king started reciting what appeared to be a prepared speech, and it basically was what one would expect from an isekai story. He was the king of a kingdom close to the Demon King's domain, and they had seen signs that the Demon King was building up his forces, preparing for war. So, to save their kingdom and the world, they had tried the ancient ritual of hero summoning, attempting to call for the hero to free their world from the evil of the Demon Lord. The result was me having arrived in the world rather than, eternal darkness, perhaps heaven or hell. Assuming this was neither heaven nor hell, I had not gotten the opportunity to find out. Instead, I had appeared in a different world, in a country called Orrende, being led by King Volrath. The mage was Whitebeard, the court wizard. After the king, Volrath, had finished his little speech, the mage Whitebeard took out a device that looked like a metal bar with what looked like a smoke-filled glass globe on each end, each about the size of a baseball. He handed this to me and asked me to grab one globe in each hand, while explaining that this is an item that could be used to identify the ability to use magic, and that had distinct reactions depending on the type of magical ability and strength or potential. Apparently, there are several types of magic that the mages in this world could use. This included elemental magic, allowing one to shape or create fire, water, earth, and air. It also included so-called light and dark magic, giving control over the energy of life, either to heal or kill. The idea of me potentially having either of these appeared to be very appealing to both of them due to the offensive potential of these types of magic. As I took the offered item and grabbing it in both hands, the room fell silent. All was waiting for the item to have some type of reaction. At first, nothing happened. Then a slight hum could be heard, appearing to increase in volume and frequency, moving from beyond what a human can hear to an intense and overwhelming high-frequency tone. At this, both of them looked increasingly excited until the noise disappeared completely and the two blue globes changed color to fill the room with a clear blue light. Both the king and the maid appeared to deflate, the disappointment obvious. The mage told me that I had very strong magical potential, but in what he called mad eye, which was unfortunately not very useful. While he was explaining this, the king turned his back to us and left the room without saying anything. Mad eye magic was very rare, and was called that because those that had the ability often went mad from the strange visions they had. After that, I didn't really see much of either the king or the mage. My presence was obviously both a disappointment and deemed bad luck, so not long after having been summoned, I was escorted by armed guards to the border of the closest neighboring country, and it was strongly suggested that I did not return, and thus started my adventure in a fantasy isekai world. And I have written a little bit further about what he experiences in this world. With the kingdom of Orenda at my back, I started walking, and left my own thoughts. The implications of the situation finally fully caught up with me. I had died. Unless I was hallucinating, having an unusually vivid dream or something similar, I had actually died and then been transported to this world. I had never really been someone that had been very interested in metaphysical questions about the meaning of life, the existence of an afterworld, ghosts, magic, and like. This now seemed a bit naive. Practical matters had always been what occupied my mind, and to be more specific, matters related to designing, writing, or exploiting code. By day, I had been working a boring, nondescript corporate job, and 1/10 of the time was spent writing a small amount of code, and the rest on administrative tasks related to getting the minor change reviewed, accepted, applied, tested, and pushed to production. Mind-numbingly boring stuff, but a relatively safe and well-paid job. Not something that anyone would wish to kill me over. What I did after getting home from work, however, probing around in the digital underbelly of the internet, looking for some service that was insufficiently protected, a gateway that was not properly secured. That was how I filled my free time. And was when I really felt alive. I had been hit by a truck when crossing the road, and it might have been an accident, but I suppose it might also have been a result of my nighttime activities. Some of the places I had penetrated had probably been connected to people that frequently made use of carefully applied violence as part of their job description. Oh well, I guess I would never know now. Practical matters, however, were also making these thoughts less very interesting. I did appear to still be alive, and this was increasingly being signaled by my stomach. I was hungry. Taking stock of my situation, I was walking down a road that appeared to be moderately well-trafficked. There were several other individuals walking in the same direction I was. Some wagons were passing in both directions, pulled by horses. The clothing I was wearing appeared to largely match those of the people around me, so I was not attracting any undue attention. I had also been given a small backpack, and it appeared to contain a couple of apples, a water skin, and a small purse of coins. So, at this point, having gotten quite hungry, I gobbled down the apples and drank part of the water. Thus, having satisfied at least the immediate physical demands of my body, I started looking around me a little bit more attentively. I was walking down a hard-packed dirt road that, while flat and wide enough to let two wagons pass each other if both went slightly off the road, was far from straight. It looked like it had been the result of choosing the path of least resistance, at times choosing a very long route to avoid steep hills, forests, and other similar parts of the terrain that presumably had been deemed to make the road less traversable or dangerous. The road appeared to be sufficiently well-traveled that I didn't really fear being jumped by bandits or brigands, but compared to the crowded city streets I was used to, the road seemed desolate and lonely. The majority of people I saw looked like humans, but once I was passed by a wagon where the wagoner looked like a dwarf. Our group also included a huge giant-like creature that was as tall as 3 men. It felt real. It was real. As incredible as it sounded, I was in a fantasy world. The people I passed all seemed to be busy on the way to or from some kind of task. Apart from a quick glance in my direction, I was ignored. Nobody greeted me or stopped to talk, and this was probably for the best. I knew very little about this world and had no allies or friends I could rely on. I would need to find some kind of plan or strategy for my stay here, but that could probably wait until I reached a town or city. For now, I did what I could, which was to observe. Most of what I didn't know about this world was what I had been told by the King Walrus and his court mage, which was not much, but there were some things I could likely assume to be true. They had likely summoned me because they needed a hero, and the reason why they needed a hero was because they feared the Demon Lord and an invasion of the land by his army. That they had summoned me now indicated that there might have been some specific event that had triggered this, but neither in the short time I was in Orende nor the time I had spent walking along this road, I had seen any signs of panic, militarization, or general preparation for war. No movements of armies, no strict checkpoints. Whatever information or event had triggered what appeared to be fear or caution in King Walrus and the Mage Whitebeard, it did not appear to be generally known. Hopefully this will give me an advantage, or at least some time to prepare for whatever conflicts and calamities the future might bring. While thinking this, I started noticing that the road appeared to increasingly connect with smaller side roads, and I continued down what appeared to be the main road. The road gradually widened, the traffic increased, and the landscape started changing. No longer was I surrounded by wilderness. The lands increasingly became cultivated fields tended by farmers. A few hours later, as the sun was starting to set, the road passed over a small hill, and from the top I could now see where the road was leading. In front of me was a bustling town. It looked to be about 50 one- or two-story wooden buildings, many of them having smoke coming out of the chimney, giving a cozy village atmosphere. There was no wall around the buildings, which were largely concentrated in the center of the village, but also with many houses spread over the nearby area. Make a scatterplot of the village, and it would have most of the dots clustered around the center, and then having decreasing density as the distance from the center increases. It was more difficult to see now that I was getting closer, but there appeared to be something distinct at the center, possibly a building that was bigger than those around it. Again starting to feel hungry, I hastened my pace and walked down the other side of the hill towards the town. Not really knowing what to expect, I approached the town. There was a group of three guards armed with long spears where the road I was walking on entered the village, but they looked bored and neither of them paid me any attention as I passed them. The road was now getting fairly crowded, and I simply continued in the direction most appeared to be walking, which was along the continuation of the road I had come in on, and that I had followed for most of the day. One thing that on further thought was quite remarkable was that I was able to understand what people were saying, even though it was obviously not a language I had been able to speak before my unfortunate death. If I carefully concentrated on the sounds, they were like that of a foreign language that I had never heard before, but I still understood what everyone was saying, as well as if I had spoken this language my whole life. This new skill did not appear to be limited to a single language either. At one point, I passed a group that appeared to be speaking a different language. The sounds and tone of the language was quite different, and I could understand them just as well. It even extended to reading. Looking at the signs in the windows of stores I was passing, I could clearly understand the meaning, even if the shape of the characters did not look like any written language I had seen on Earth. Blacksmith, butcher, flour, etc. This world did evidently not have any experience with branding and marketing, but understanding what was being sold was simple. What about writing, I thought to myself, and trying to emulate the use of a pen by tracing characters in my palm with a finger, and yes, it did look like my ability extended to writing. Which meant that even if I did not have any useful magical ability, I did have a skill that might be useful. Looking at the shop signs, most had some kind of illustration along with the title, such as an anvil in the case of a blacksmith. If medieval societies on Earth were indication, literacy would not be widespread. And someone that could communicate and write in several different languages would probably be even more rare. Feeling a little bit more confident about my future, I stopped looking at all the shops I passed and instead continued towards the center of the town at a brisk pace. A little later, I could see the buildings ahead spreading out. The center of town appeared to be an open space. And that's as far as I got. I've gotten so far. I see there are some typos and sentence word problems here and there in the text, but generally I got down on basically paper, but I managed to write down the most important things, and I think I gotten to a point where it's necessary to think a little bit about how to proceed further, and that's what I thought I'd do now. So I'll first comment a little bit about what I have written. So it's basically the very first part of the story, introduction. So he arrives in the world, and then I chose to have him run around on his own. So he is not associated with the kingdom that summons him at the beginning, and I thought this would give me a little bit more freedom in how I do things from now on, but could perhaps done things differently. Maybe him having some kind of allies or people that he could talk to later or something like that, that came from this kingdom would have been a useful alternative, but at least he knows a little bit about the world, and he has arrived in it, and it looks like he has some skills that might be useful, and there isn't said much about the magical powers that he apparently has, but presumably that's something that will appear later on. So, next bit is to determine what happens next, and I think there are a couple of obvious alternatives now. Some of them do, however, depend a little bit upon, I guess you could say, the tone of the story. Some of these isekai stories are, I guess you could say, they don't have that much in the way of dramatic tension is the right word, but there's really not a huge amount of tragedy in them. If you look at story like Demon Slayer, for example, well, that's not really a fantasy, but it's a serious story that at times has humor elements, but it's a serious story that has a lot of tragedy. Lots of people are killed. There are lots of tragic elements to the story. The story overall is quite tragic and desperate. It's high stakes in the story, and there could be that there are isekai stories that are like this also. I would assume they are, but many of those that I have watched are, you say, perhaps in the other end of the spectrum. It's more of being quite I'm not sure if lacking drama is the right word, but there is a sort of feeling of certainty that there won't really be any huge amount of tragedy in the story. It's more light-hearted, and you see how the hero addresses the problems that he runs into and tries to solve them. So if you look at the how realist hero rebuilt the kingdom story, for example, then you have of course there is a lot of dramatic events and so on that happens, but it's it usually things usually turn out well. You don't have that many characters that are killed during the story, at least not of the main characters. You have a war and so on, so there are obviously people that die, but of the main characters and the associates and so on, things usually turn out well for them, and you have all kind of dramatic situations that occur, but the hero is usually able to find a solution and solve whatever problems appear. So that's one way also to write a story. In that case, the reader sort of expects or ends up expecting that things are structured in that way, so that you don't really need to fear any great tragedies in the story with regards to characters disappearing and dying and so on. And then you have the more tragic and dramatic types of stories on the other end, and in the middle of these there are of course naturally a wide range of possibilities, and the question then becomes how I place this story that I'm working on. I'm not entirely certain I want to fully decide on this now, but what I have written so far is perhaps closer to the less dramatic alternative. You have already gotten a couple of pages into the story, and even though the protagonist obviously dies at the beginning, he that's really not a tragic event. It's more like a requirement for this type of story to actually start. So ignoring that that one event, what happens is mainly the character adapting to the situation that he has found himself in, and thinking about how to handle this situation in the future. So one alternative is to continue in this direction, in which case I could continue the story a little bit further without there really being necessarily any very dramatic event. Because that's one thing I did consider. So you have often in books some kind of dramatic event during, if not the first page, at least very early, to presumably catch the reader's attention. And I guess that's an effective technique since people do this. And I guess if you have some dramatic event in the beginning, that's more likely to continue reading than if you have the protagonist philosophizing about the languages that he is now able to speak and so on. But at the same time, this will likely not be a story that has extremely wide appeal, since it's sort of a niche within a niche within a niche. So I don't really think it's a problem to avoid these techniques that are meant to catch a very wide number of reader types. So I don't think it's a big problem that there's really nothing dramatic that happens. So I did comment a little bit in the text about the hero not fearing that there be any brigands or bandits and something similar attacking, and that's partly because that I thought that might be one possibility. You could sort of kick things off very early by having him be attacked by some kind of bandit group or something. And you can use this to trigger whatever events need to happen in the next part of the story. But for a sort of a low-key type of story, having a very slow build-up isn't necessarily a problem, I think, and that's one way to do it. So it's already, the story already hints at this. So he might be able to find some kind of work as an interpreter or something similar, scribe, interpreter, and simply having him continue down that path is one thing that could do without really having any very dramatic event. But some kind of dramatic event would be a way to introduce necessary elements to the story, because I do want to have him team up with a group of adventurers, and also to have the demon lord established more firmly in the story, which for example would involve the hero traveling with the adventurers to some kind of location, and there being a magic item or something that triggers an encounter or some kind of confrontation with the demon lord, and in that way you have a very clear path forward for the story. And it doesn't necessarily need to be very complicated to do this. You have the hero running some kind of translation or interpretation business in town, and then you have these adventurers that need to have some kind of old text or something read, and they bring him with them to some kind of location out in the wilderness where there is, for example, this obelisk with some writing on it or something, and writing and starting to read this, he in some way triggers the attention of the demon lord, and there is some kind of reaction from him. And in this case, you would have established the main participants in the storyline. So this is one alternative, which is builds fairly naturally from the point that the story is in now. And another alternative, which I guess also could develop quite naturally from the point where the story so far ended, because he comes to this town center, and what does he find there? It seems like this could be a way to turn the story in a very different direction. So you could, for example, have that there are some cages with captured demon characters or something. Perhaps they have this auction to sell these, or they plan to execute them or something, and this would be a possible trigger for the protagonist to actually end up being an ally or associated with the demon lord instead of the nations of the human realm. So this is also a possibility that would take things in a at least somewhat unexpected direction from the point where it is now. And then there is a third alternative, which is somewhere in the middle, and basically the next thing I want to do is to first have him established in some kind of way with the skills that he has, and there's also him meeting the people that will become his companions, and there's the demon lord character, establishing him, and there's also the question of his powers, how are these manifesting in this world, how can they be used, is there some kind of connection to his programming skills, because that's hinted at in the title. So there are all these questions that ideally you would at least have some hints or steps towards as early as possible, I guess. And instead of having it play out a longer period of time, you could also, I guess, force it with some kind of dramatic event. So if you have the characters that will be his companion, having some kind of conflict where either the protagonist is attacked or where the people that will become his companions are under attack and he assists, or something like this. Very commonly used type of way to introduce these characters and have them become companions, but that's also an alternative, I guess. So I think that's the general outline for what I can decide between. And I haven't really decided on what I'm going to do. I think perhaps the becoming an ally with the Demon King, that's perhaps the most original alternative. It's at least the most unexpected, perhaps, when you have read the story so far. So that's one thing that's attractive with that. But if the demon lord in some way ends up being a companion, then you get the question of who is the opponent. So I guess, of course, you can have the protagonist assist the demon-like character, since he doesn't really know anything about this world, and in that way become known to or get to know the demon lord, but at some point realize that this person or this nation is not something that he wants to associate with. So that's also one way to do it, I guess, which maybe wouldn't be too bad. But yes, I didn't necessarily want to do too much deconstruction or attempt at being very original with the basic story structure either, so slightly dilemma, and it's something I'll have to decide on before I continue. I think perhaps I will not take the very slow approach. I think things have been fairly slow for the first pages now, so something should happen. The question is just what direction this event that will likely happen in this location, the center of the town, which direction it will take the story in next. Yeah, so that's basically where I am. I will think a little bit more about this and try to write a couple of pages more. If I don't appear to have any significant progress on this, I will continue on the Project A source material the next time I stream, I think. But for now, I think perhaps gone through the most important bits. The text that I read through was obviously a little bit rough, and I could probably benefit from a rewrite or two, but I think not much point in trying to polish the text at this early point, so try to get down more of the story, and perhaps at some point when I've gotten quite a bit longer, it will be apparent if there are some elements of the first part of the story that should be rewritten or restructured in some kind of way. But I think I'll know when the time comes. So maybe it will be at the very end. Try to write through the entire thing and then go through it afterwards and clean it up, and so we will see. But so far I'm quite satisfied with progress. Text not perfect by all means, but I did manage to have some progress at least. So now it's just a matter of deciding on where to take things next. But for now I'll end this, so thank you for watching or reading, or rather watching and listening, and I'll hopefully be back soon with the next part of the story. But for now, bye bye.